Okay, today we have a strength and conditioning coach, but he actually doesn't have that many clients left, and we're going to get into why that is. He is based in Maroubra in Sydney, and he's been involved with rugby and a ton of other sports. He has trained a lot of athletes in a variety of sports, from what I understand. You can find him on Instagram under Clint_Hill Strength. Clint Hill, welcome on the show.
Thanks very much, Kim. Take care that it's one of the most exciting experiences to be here and have an opportunity to chat away with you, mate.
These podcasts are so fun. I actually considered in the beginning I was going to do the whole story about. So one of my main goals were to get to 30 episodes in a podcast, and it was just an arbitrary number. I just wanted to get to 30, get the ball rolling, and it has taken me a very long time, but the last 6 months have been amazing. It probably took me 2 years to get to 5, and then now I'm well over 30. And one of the cool things has been meeting a ton of new people. And I had a previous guest recommend to get you on, and I've actually never met you before, but we have some similar friends. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, well, even in our little chat, off air, I can't believe how many people we know and how many roles have crossed over of friends of ours and so on and so forth. So it's that's the beauty of the fitness industry. Every single time you meet someone or you think you know so many people already, this is my 24th year in the industry as of February 2. So it's been an interesting journey for me, and look, one that I'm still definitely on. And as you sort of alluded to in the intro, there's only a few athletes that I've kept on my books because the journey's taken me in a slightly different direction these days. So it's been pretty exciting for me.
Well, we definitely have to delve into that. And to your point, I love that the community is so connected really in a lot of different ways. But Clint, I have to ask you this question first. This is my opening because I had to go to the shops yesterday. Current affairs, have you stocked up on toilet paper?
Look, it's really funny. I think I reposted on my Instagram just yesterday. 3,000 people have died from coronavirus and 30,000 people have died in the last year from obesity. So can we get a grip on reality and start to move forward? But no, I haven't. But I did notice as I went to the bathroom that there was a couple of rolls here. I might knock them off on my way through.
Hey, don't steal anyone from our workplace. It's so crazy. I can't
believe they're still there.
Yeah, I know.
Hey?
I mean, after today, probably not.
Probably not, yeah.
Because now the panic is starting to be like, I'm not worried about the coronavirus and all that other stuff. But now I'm like, well, I do want to have toilet paper at home.
Well, on current affair last night or the day before, I'm unsure which one. I apologise. There was a huge thing about the fact that that Kleenex or Sorbent or one of the big toilet paper are like, guys, chill out. We've got plenty of toilet paper. Like this is not, it's really interesting that it's become just about toilet paper.
Yeah, I think the contention was that whether or not it gets manufactured in Australia or in China, because people think it's in China and then we're not going to get shipped anymore because they don't know.
Well, the South Australian plan of whichever company this particular was a guy standing in front of more toilet paper than I've ever seen before.
Too funny. But don't worry, listeners, we're going to move on. That's it's just an icebreaker, but it's a bit of a silly point. But if you are a listener and you have stocked up on toilet paper, spare me a couple of rolls, please. Now, Clint, you have been a strength and conditioning coach, and in many ways you still are, but you're also mentoring strength and conditioning coaches. But I do want to ask you, when did your journey start personally with getting strong? Like, how did you first decide, all right, I need to get stronger? And how did you go about it then?
Okay, so in 1993, I walked into. I grew up in a country town in regional New South Wales called Tamworth, and in 1993, I got told I needed to put on some size because I was playing rugby and water polo at the time.
How old were you then?
So I was 14.
Wow. Okay.
And was told I needed to put on some size, and I walked into a PCYC. And saw, and I tell this story all the time, I saw this guy, in my opinion, throwing a weight above his head. And I just remember sitting there just watching this guy in awe for about 35 minutes before I had the guts to even speak to anyone. And look, turns out he was just doing cleans. It wasn't anything, but to me that was, I'd never seen anything like it. I thought it was amazing. I think the only other time I'd seen anything like that was the Olympics, so I was, to that was how my journey began. Couple of years at the PCYC, putting on some size and whatever else, and
did you go to the clean exercise straight away? Was that like
yeah?
Wow,
this was a full on
at 14.
Yeah. So for me, my journey was probably fairly different to most. I walked into a weightlifting club rather than into I guess a
fitness first
or whatever, you know, because growing up in the country, my options were limited.
Yeah.
That particular gym had a cable. It didn't have any particular machine weights. I think there was a leg press, I think, from some type of memory. But again, that was jacked up with, you know, hundreds and hundreds of kilos, because the powerlifters and weightlifters that train there literally dead bench clean.
Yeah.
But strangely enough, there was a huge crossover in those days between powerlifting and weightlifting and even bodybuilding, to be fair. And I think that came off the back of, you know, a lot of the Arnie style, you know, still doing cleans and whatever else for bodybuilding. So
wait, did Arnie do cleans as well?
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He incorporated a lot of power movements into his training.
Generally just power cleans though, no
power
full
cleans.
Yeah.
Well,
that's amazing.
Look, whatever they would have been at those days, they were
still
the most powerful type of clean he could do, probably with lack of form. But you know.
Yeah, still a barbell from the floor to your shoulder.
Still a barbell clean of some description.
Oh, that's mad.
Yeah, so so that's where the journey started, and then scholarship to Sydney with Sydney University, which therefore meant for me, you know, obviously still in the gym and whatever else, and rugby was the you know, the key point at that point in my life.
Were you a big kid through that, like through your early stages of uni?
Yeah, look, I guess you know, I played at 106 kilos.
Yeah, so you did put on some size.
So I had to put on a lot of size. But interestingly enough, I guess the biggest thing for me was I knew I was never going to be a great footy player. Suffered from a lot of injuries, but also enjoyed the process of rehab way more than anyone else around me, which was really weird. Now, I was already doing exercise sports science at uni on, as I said, scholarship. You know, a couple of years playing footy, a couple of major injuries, and then decided that it was time to give it away and go down the strength and conditioning path, which I'd already started, you know, doing some on the side, so to speak, of, you know, shadowing some good S&Cs and following guys like Peter Harding through, and he was my first ever S&C in Sydney, who's a tremendous human being. And from there, I ended up, I guess, doing my first master's degree, which I did human biomechanics, which was also Sydney Uni, because the strength and conditioning masters didn't exist at that point in time. So human biomech, where I then got involved with the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association. Did my level 1, level 2 and level 3 there, and have gone on to be the highest level of elite master coach.
What does that mean, elite master coach?
Okay, so I guess, there's 16 of us in Australia currently, and not only do you have to have, I guess, a series of formal qualifications, you have to have the experience under the belt as well. So you have to have trained teams and individuals. And if you haven't trained a team, it has to be a team of individuals. For example, national level gymnasts or something like that. You have to have coached people to an international level, which is one of your athletes here at True. Kendrick Louis is one of the athletes that I've worked with, which obviously took to international level, you know, two world titles, and you know, I guess there's, you know, in two different sports for him, in Ironman and also in paddling. So there's been some differences of you know, sports there as well. Yeah, you got to have those internationals. Plus, I've also had rugby union and rugby league internationals, and luckily enough, I've also had a gold medalist at the Olympics. Also had 2 silver medalists. So I've had some fairly varied sports over the years, and been,
what sports in the Olympics?
Rowing mainly, but then also sevens. Rugby.
So power athletes, really.
Yeah, powerful. Yeah.
The other 15 elite master coaches, broadly speaking, what are they doing? Who are they coaching now?
Sure. Look, you know, and I mean, look, I have also worked professionally in teams as well. You know, worked for West Tigers, worked for the Waratahs, worked for, you know, internationally in Japan, France, and also New Zealand. So I've done plenty of the team-based, you know. But the other 15 guys and girls are either at institutes or heads of organisations, high performance units, whether it be places like the AIS, whether it be, you know, Queensland Reds Rugby Union.
Awesome.
You know, David Boyle, who's one of my biggest mentors. He's the current secretary of the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association. He works for the NRL in the referees department now. So,
oh wow,
you know, so it's
it's
real
kind of the pinnacle of the S&C in Australia. Then,
yeah,
would
look,
you say so?
Yeah, look,
Yeah.
it's and it's interesting. There's a lot of and I guess with the growth of sports like CrossFit. You know, there's the term S&C gets thrown around fairly aggressively.
It's
you
a
know,
broad,
very broad, and even, you know, down to, you know, there's certain gyms in Australia now, you know, that are in my opinion group fitness facilities. That are using the term group strength and conditioning facilities to get the catch cry in. Now that doesn't mean they aren't a strength and conditioning facility, but they're still a group training mentality, and you know the term strength and conditioning should be a 12-month periodized plan for every single thing they do. You know, rather than, you know, sometimes this is just a mashup of how hard I can make this session.
Yeah, that is a great point. And I should say this kind of in defense of a lot of the gyms, I think, because I've been part of CrossFit for many, many years and love it. I've had such a great experience with it. But I think what's happening now, and it has been happening over the last few years, is that CrossFit has been getting a worse and worse name through everyone thinks it's injuries, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of CrossFit gyms are rebranding calling it strength and conditioning, kind of in a way to try and find something that classifies the gym without calling it CrossFit, right?
Correct.
So it's probably not to step on strength and conditioning's toes per se, but it's just
it's almost to add validity. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And you know, I quite regularly make the joke, and every CrossFitter I know hates this joke, but in the initial stages of CrossFit, I'd like to thank the whole CrossFit world and community, because you made me a lot of money while I was fixing people who were broken. Now, there was a lot of injuries in the early stages because you were getting couch potatoes and turning them into, you know, five day a week training, you know, as opposed to people who might slip into a fitness first. They'll start with 2 or 3 days and they might do a body pump class. The chance of injury in something like that is very limited. You know what I mean? So you're throwing a bodyweight snatch above head.
Yep.
So, you know, it's not that the injuries were created because of someone training. They were created because that person was detrained or untrained when they first came into the facility. So it's not, you know, and as I said, it's a joke against CrossFit, but realistically, you know, anything to get someone off the couch is a fantastic thing in my opinion.
I mean, that is spot on. My experience was very lucky because I was blessed with good trainers and had a kind of a good upbringing, if you want to call it that, in a CrossFit gym. So my progression was very gradual. Also, I was fairly weak per se, so I didn't lift that heavy weight. But the upside of it was that people got so hooked, they just wanted to train more and more. So that people get kind of caught into it. But now the community has developed a lot. And there's a lot of good trainers within the community. Also some average ones, but
of course.
Like with any industry, right?
Look, you know, the nature of the fitness industry has changed dramatically. You know, so 1997, my first gym that I worked out of was called Fitbods in Burwood. So I was, you know, when I first moved down here, I was living out in the western suburbs, or inner west, if you in now. I took a job on there. And it was a very, very different world to what it is today. You know,
can you pinpoint some of the changes that has happened within the fitness industry for the general public from back then till now?
Yeah. Look, I guess, you know, the first one that I want to bring up, and I love telling this story to people, don't make definitive claims. And the reason that I say that, if somebody comes out and says, this is the perfect way, this is the only way, I can almost guarantee you that in 10 years, the research is going to come back at you and bite you in the ass. So I remember, when we first walked into that first gym that I worked out of, everything was about bodybuilding. And there was, a leg extension machine. And this is, as I said, one of my favorite stories. Leg extension machine was the hardest thing to get on leg day, which was Wednesday. International Chest Day Monday, and it folds through from there. So here we are. Everyone's doing leg extension. Now, what occurred from there is very simply that particular piece of equipment was then deemed to be the thing that was shearing people's knees and causing ACL injuries and causing MCL, PCL, degradation and these kind of things. And people, in the functional fitness community were saying that, that you didn't need a leg extension machine and blah, blah, blah. So, you could probably pick up a leg extension machine on the out the front of a gym sitting on the street corner for a while there. And then more research was done in Germany and the US, and it's now back in fashion. Now,
hack squats, right?
Of all of those, and look, I think I could find, 10 or 12 different, types of very similar scenarios around that kind of stuff. So, yeah, the first one is definitely make sure that you don't make sweeping statements. This is the perfect exercise. This will fix this, da-da-da-da-da. Look at Knees Over Toes guy right now. Like the first ever fitness handbook written by Nigel and Lisa Champion in 1994 said that the knee should never pass the toe in a lunge. Now, we argue about that now because the concept of running means your knee goes straight past your toe. Concept of the Knees Over Toes guy, doing things like sissy squats and all of these kind of things that have become, I'm going to call them fashionable, because everything goes in cycles, whether it's hairstyles or exercises. There's always going to be styles that come through. But the big thing to really draw out of that, and the biggest change I've seen in the fitness industry, is definitely that things become sweeping statements. They become the gold standard, the only way, whatever it happens to be. And it's just not true.
Yeah, I think people try and create this loud message on social media in one Instagram post that, like to your point, knees shouldn't be tracking over your foot. So as soon as you see that, it grabs your attention, right?
Yeah.
That's why people do it. But you're spot on. It's so, I mean, we
it might as well just be a booty shot, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just gaining, you're
trying to create controversy.
Yeah. And I argue about controversy too, like, I mean, I've been in the industry 24 years and you'd never heard of me for until, just a couple of days ago. I actually like that. I don't have 25,000 Instagram followers, and I don't get on there and bag the shit out of another S&C or another PT or another coach, right?
Who does that, dude?
I think, well, that's right. Like, I've got some real gripes with the guys who say this is the only way to bench, this is the only way to squat, this is the perfect method, my method is better than someone else's, and all of these kind of things. I just don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe there's room in this industry to make it so many different pathways grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got to ask you this then. If you could have, well, let's say if you had your own podcast and you got to interview a strength and conditioning coach, who would be your dream guest and what would you ask them? Like, what would you try and learn from someone?
Look, I guess, I'd normally start with saying the local guys, and that would be, Dan Baker, David Boyle. So Dan Baker is the head of the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association, and anyone who has been to the ASCA conference will know that Dan's famous, joke right after all of the festivities and whatever else, the formalities have finished, and when the festivities are about to start, he says, righto guys, now it's time to saw your head open and tip in the hooligan juice. So he's a very out there dude, I mean, he was the Broncos S&C for 16 years.
Wow.
And still holds national deadlifting records for his age. So someone like him would definitely be, amazing. He's had some brilliant athletes go through that Broncos facility, and some of his quotes I still use religiously today. Things like, it's not a good program if there isn't a squat, a dead, a bench, and a pull.
I like that.
So that's, simple stuff.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so basic. I look back at some of the programs I wrote in the early 2000s and I go, my God, what was I thinking?
What did your program look like?
Oh, man, there were just so many exercises. Now I do very limited exercises and so many sets.
Yeah.
I get a lot of guys laugh at me when they get through my first program. I've got a couple of online guys at the moment that I sent through their first program. And they're like, what's going on here? There's 6 sets of everything. I'm like, yeah, we need to know whether that works.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay. So, yeah.
Would you say that in your early days as a trainer, you put in a lot of kind of fancy looking exercises and now you're back to the
Oh, yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's really funny. I get asked all the time, what would I go back and tell my former self, And I tell myself to pull my head out of my ass. Just shut up, sit down and listen.
Yeah.
If you've been in this industry for less than 7 or 8 years, what you think you're amazing at, you're going to look back at in 5 or 6 years and just belt yourself in the head.
That was my journey as a trainer.
Look, and it's most, now I mentor, over 30 trainers, be it PCs, S&Cs, whatever it happens to be, and a huge part of that is me just saying, chill out. You're doing really well, guys. Relax. Are you making enough money? Well, there you go. You're better off than about 90% of PTs. So just chill out, okay? Yeah. So I think it's really important. But back to your first question, Dan Baker. Now there's a whole bunch of S&Cs. I guess that Ashley Jones, who is the former All Blacks and Crusaders S&C in the Super Rugby. Is one of the greatest men I've had the opportunity to sit down and speak with. I guess, there's some amazing, women in the industry these days that Suki Hobson, who is now currently working over in the NBA. I know Suki when she was earning 40 grand at the Queensland Reds, doing a time. So it's tough to have these conversations sometimes because I kind of also get a little bit angry because I hear young S&Cs going, oh, I'm not going to take that job because it's only 50 grand, or I'm not going to take that job because, there's too many hours, or blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I look back at what some of the guys that I came through did, I was doing, my first S&C role was with the Balmain Tigers. I think I was in third year uni. So I was working full time. I was in third year uni. I was also doing the Balmain Tigers Jersey Flag, which is the old under-20s competition, which has just been revitalised. I was not getting paid for the Jersey Flag. I was also still going and doing 1 day a week with the first grade squad to keep my name current. And I was filling water bottles and
that's a great point.
mopping up vomit and mopping up sweat and, cleaning benches and whatever else. And I still believe that doing your time is a good thing.
And you got to do that time when you're young, right?
Absolutely.
When you're 45 and you got kids, you don't want to take a job for 50 grand and do all the shit stuff. But when you're young, in your early 20s, get your name out there, stay relevant.
Absolutely. But then on the flip side of that, I also heard a situation where there's a young S&C coach that did 2 years full time in one of the Sydney AFL franchises for free as an intern, and then did a 12-month intern with the Waratahs, and then moved on to somewhere else that he did another 12 months. Now, he was
taking a piss a little bit
taking the piss
while,
out of the
right?
kid, Now, he was lucky. Mum and dad were very wealthy, so there was no problem on that side of the financial front, which is also probably why he could do it. But that makes life tough.
Yeah, I think with that, when you do it that long and basically working for free, you set a bad precedence in the industry as well. I mean, I'm in the creative industry with videography and photography.
Yep.
And sometimes, you do have to take jobs and work kind of for free if it's the right fit.
Yep.
But if you do that all the time and you're pushing your prices down, it ruins it for everyone else.
Yeah. And we talked about it when we were walking to grab a coffee. You know, one of the interesting parts of the industry is what do you accept? You know, and the fitness industry can be you might get asked to do some videography for someone who is and I'll terrible way to say this, but is an up and comer in the industry that you don't know where they're going to go.
Yeah.
They might ask you to do that for free. You might not be able to do it for free at the time, but you might choose to do it for free for someone who is, you know, a bigger name and those kind of things. And I hate that that's the situation that the industry's gotten to. But that serves as a self-promo model, you know, that's, you know, a self-perpetuating cycle of, you know, that person's got an Instagram following of 100,000 people. So therefore your name is attached to every one of those photos or every one of those videos or whatever it happens to be. So that then falls out into more work for you.
Yeah.
Whereas,
it's marketing in a way.
Yeah, it's marketing, right? And it's technically you haven't had to pay for it. Yeah. It's just your time that's cost you.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to jump back to something you mentioned earlier about the exercises because some of the listeners, actually I know quite a few of the listeners are tiptoeing a little bit around getting into, I would say, particularly strength training. They're a little bit nervous about it. They don't really want to lift weights. They don't see the benefits of it. But you mentioned like the clean, the bench, the squat, the deadlift, those main ones. For someone who hasn't done that before, that's a pretty scary exercise. And I definitely wouldn't recommend them to just jump into a gym and start doing it.
Yeah.
But explain why these exercises are kind of considered the bread and butter, really where you get your bang for your buck, if you're going to say it in a cliche way. And how would you start about it?
Cool. Well, I guess I'm gonna partly answer the question in a little bit of a roundabout way, and then I'm going to come back to answering it properly.
Perfect.
Okay. The first thing that I would say to you is, what is the value that you perceive of your body? We will go and buy an expensive car. We will go and, you know, buy expensive shoes and you know, nice clothes and a great watch and all these things. But to spend $100 on a trainer to learn a session or to learn the correct technique still is one of those cliche items that is seen as a luxury. You have one body, and how you choose to treat that is completely up to yourself. So the first piece of advice that I'd give all of your listeners, and this is by no means, you know, perpetuating this towards myself, find a trainer in your local area who's well qualified, has great realms of experience, and you connect with. Sit down, have a coffee with them, see if they're the right fit for you. Go down that path first. Get them to do a few sessions with you. A couple of $100 in the long term of how your body functions is a very, very minimal amount. That's the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice around strength training is 100% get into it as quickly as possible. Okay. Now, I
wish I could tell myself that.
You know what? It's so funny, right? Like every single person that I have the conversation with post getting into strength training says, "Why didn't I do this earlier?"
Yep.
Now, it's the same as the, you know, whether it be, you know, your choice of career or whatever it happens to be. The sooner you start, the better the effects are going to be, right? You try and start, you know, weight training when you're 50, it's going to be a lot slower process, and there's going to be some niggles and there's going to be some pain and so on and so forth. You start it when you're 20, that all becomes a heck of a lot less, I guess, you know, dramatic. So look, as I said, I think realistically the benefits, don't worry about just the hormonal stuff. Don't worry about the, you know, bone degradation and, you know, getting rid of osteoporosis and those kind of things. Think about the general effects of movement, okay? Now, for me, the second anyone gets into strength training, there's obviously the amazing hormonal benefits and whether it's the release of serotonin or whatever it happens to be. You know, we want to make sure that people are fitter, healthier, and I guess overall happier. And for me, you know, and we spoke again off air about, you know, suicide prevention, which is something that's very near to my heart. We try and make sure that people are training as much as possible. And it doesn't have to be, it can be whatever type of training you want it to be. You have to enjoy what you're doing. And I enjoy strength training.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It does. it does wonders for your mental health training. And yeah, it can be frustrating at times, and especially when you learn a new skill. But as soon as you get over that hump and you know, like we talked about before, like when you learn to power clean, it's so fun. And suddenly you power clean your body weight, and it's like, wow.
Well, I had a tremendous realization about two or 3 weeks ago, and it was a bit ruthless on my own mental health, to be absolutely fair. And that is, I've lifted the heaviest weights I'm ever going to lift.
Oh, me too.
Like I'm well past, right? You know, I turned 41 in January, and I remember thinking at that time that I was still invincible. And I look back at what I was power cleaning and when I was playing rugby, or even, you know, post that. And I was like, oh shit, that's not happening again.
Those numbers are not coming back.
Not happening again.
What did you power clean?
Best ever was 145.
Oh, dang.
So
that's heavy.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But I mean,
you don't have to, right, anymore.
No.
I think that's the realizations I've come to, right? My old numbers, they're cool to look back on, but I don't have to.
I'm going to be running yearly PBs now.
Yeah, well,
I'm setting up a new system.
Yeah, I like that.
Because January 1, I start with a clean slate every year. Actually, I might start it on January 2. But
I like that. I might have to do that as well.
Going to run a new system, yearly PBs.
Yeah. I try and just peak once a year. That's enough.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
Because it's with my strength training, it's just so hard to keep up with the numbers. Yeah.
Well, I think also you've got to be realistic around what your goals are these days, you know, like, and I talk to all of my mentoring clients about this, right? Like if you're in a business building phase, well then build your business and train a couple of times a week. If you're in a training phase, well, train. And if your business falls away a little bit, your business falls away a little bit. Okay. You cannot have everything going forward all the time. You know, I get the shits with the whole, you know, grind and hustle and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Sleep when you're dead.
Yeah, all of that stuff. I'm sorry. You know,
I couldn't agree more.
I love my sleep. I love my recovery. You know, I have my own infrared sauna and ice bath in my garage. Like I'm very serious about that side of it. I genuinely believe that you need to not necessarily just slow down, but have things timed the way you want to. You know, your timelines, my timelines, and your listeners' timelines are very different things. Don't judge yourself by other standards. We all make mistakes. We've all had things go wrong. Relax. Okay.
Yeah. It's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to think of it a bit more as sprinting.
Yep.
So I'm going on a holiday in a couple of weeks, and it has been very busy just before that, but that's okay. I know I'm sprinting a little bit towards this date. And then I know as soon as that date hits, I'm off my phone, I'm off my computer, I'm off my cameras, nothing. So it's fine for now. But yeah, I do notice it a lot. Like my sleep has been way worse, and my stress level and probably my temper has been a bit worse than usual. Sure. But it's coming to an end. And then hopefully after the holiday as well, I'll just be cruising a little bit more for a while. So yeah. I had another question, another topic I wanted to jump on, which is probably a little bit of a change. But tell me a little bit about RISE and the work that you do there and how that all started.
Yeah, so the RISE Foundation is a suicide prevention and education organisation. So we run workshops on mental health first aid. So if you're a rugby team, a soccer team, you know, a local surf life-saving club, it doesn't matter what it is, we do a first aid course for mental health.
Wow, yep.
So we teach people the telltale signs for someone else, and we also give tools that are easy to use around how to help someone who's gone through a tough time, how to make sure to ask how someone is, how to make sure that everyone is actually okay. Now, I got involved with RISE very interestingly through a guy by the name of Ben Higgs. So Ben's a good mate of mine, wonderful human being and bipolar. So Ben started RISE after too many of his mates in the local Maroubra area had taken their own lives. And he wanted to do something about it, so he started the treadmill run. So the 24-hour treadmill run was started by himself and a guy by the name of Aaron Moore. They started with 2 treadmills in fitness. On the beach at above the fitness centre in Maroubra Seals. Wow. And 2 years later, that same treadmill run had 45,000 treadmills around Australia.
Wow, that's amazing.
So yeah.
Yeah. And so with these this mental
mental health first aid. Yep.
Mental health first aid. Can you give us a couple of you don't have to give away all your secrets, but some of the things that you do work, like what do you do there?
Look, the whole day is it's a day-long workshop, and it's designed around, I guess, some of the language that people use, or noticing change.
Yeah.
So, if you had someone who was previously, the person who was at every event, previously the person who was, always, I guess, the first one to text, or just some of the subtleties of life, but also being able to acknowledge how to speak to them and then knowing where to point them if that was the case.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets hard for people, because I think deep down most of us can notice if someone close to you starts to get a bit more secluded, or they have some of the telltale signs. Like you can feel it in your gut, right? If you know someone close. But then it's always hard to do that first approach and bring it up, because you're thinking, oh, maybe they don't want to talk about it.
Correct. And there's a really simple one. The first one is asking, would you like to talk about it, or would you like me to help you find someone that can help you talk about it? Right? Rather than just going to, hey, how are you feeling? And them go, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah. I guess that's the problem. Are you okay?
I've done my job.
It's like they're correct. That's a great campaign, not having anything against it. But the problem with that question is that it's very easy to ask, and then they can so easily deny it.
Yeah. How many times have you heard someone say to you, oh, I'm fine?
Oh, it's the stock standard.
Absolutely.
It's like, I'm fine, I'm busy.
My grandmother used to say to me, and this was something that I joke about quite regularly when we do talks. My grandmother used to say, if a woman says to you she's fine, just run. So because the simple concept is that nobody's fine. Okay. There's always something going on, but people don't want to burden others with what's going on in their lives, right? So it is about finding that person. For me, it's a therapist for, and some of my friends. I started using a sports psychologist when I was first in Sydney, and it was the best decision ever. I thought, why do I need a sports psychologist? Well, I did, because the number of injuries that I had meant that I just didn't know how to function with, those kind of things. I played water polo growing up as well. So I had all kinds of shoulder reconstructions because of water polo and rugby, which meant I never got to where I thought I should have gotten to.
Yeah. Would you say that with your injuries that you had, almost the hardest part with being injured is not really the physical pain or whatever's happening with your body, it's the mental aspect of it, right?
Of course, and I look at, I've got a young guy living with me at the moment, come over from Perth, was playing for the Force and is now signed with the Waratahs. He's never had a major injury.
Wow.
And I think to myself, like, A, how lucky, but B, you actually haven't found any mental fortitude yet.
Yeah, you haven't been tested yet.
You haven't been tested. And I always think about, the good old Instagram, quotes that you see flying through about, you're only given the things that you're able to cope with, and all of these kind of things. And I look at that and I think, well, yeah, maybe, but what if you had the right tools before those things occurred? You knew who to reach out to, you knew where you should be reaching out to, and what if you started before that, right? Like, we've got a coach for everything else. Why wouldn't we have a coach for our brain?
Yeah, it's such a good point. It's absolutely, and it's a relief to get stuff out there, even if I think for some people are really scared of approaching a psychologist or a therapist or something like that. But even writing things down, so you're almost talking to yourself.
Yeah,
exactly right. Journaling, like, that's really helpful too. But I think it's even better if it's a person that can give you some feedback.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, absolutely. And a qualified person. That's the other thing, right? It's the same as going to a trainer. Don't go to your mate who looks fantastic in the gym. Go to the coach of that particular gym. It's definitely that whole concept around make sure you do the right thing.
Yeah. Having worked as a trainer, I say this all the time, but sometimes you do feel like a therapist, and you've got to quickly kind of step out and be like, well, obviously you want to help your client, but at some point there can be too many red flags, and you have to send them on to someone else.
We did some at uni. We did some areas of psychology, and did a couple of topics, and I thought, I'm pretty well equipped for this, and I got nothing on some of those guys. Like, listening to some of the stuff that not only my psych and others that I've met over the years, some of the most amazing people have gotten some insane results out of people, and I think there was a great example in the CrossFit Games a few years back. I don't remember which athlete it was, but they went and used the sports psych, and after they used that sports psych, they had their best result.
So, yeah, I think there's a few of those actually that's done that. Yeah, I just listened to a podcast from the WSL, the Surf League, with Ryan Callanan.
Yeah,
and that was incredible, and he got so much help from a therapist.
Yeah, well, Luke Egan pushed him down that path. And I remember, because I've done a little bit of work with Luke down at Lean Performance in Cronulla, and I remember him talking about the fact that the surfers now, because of the whole Andy Irons scenario, and if your listeners have not seen the Andy Irons movie, Kissed by God, please.
It's incredible.
Please go see it.
Incredible, but also quite heavy.
Oh, very heavy. Yeah. I went to the opening night here in George Street in the Event Cinemas, which had Lindy Irons and Bruce, and they both spoke. Now Bruce stood up and walked out before the movie started, because if you see the opening scene,
you don't,
and I won't spoil the opening scene, but it's probably one of the strongest moments I've ever encountered in sport.
Yeah, it's very raw.
Very raw.
Yeah.
So yeah. And look, I'm just sitting here, talking about it. I still got goosebumps.
I'm getting the same. I've only seen that movie once, and it sticks with you forever.
Yeah,
I think.
you bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
So with Rise, how can people approach it? Like, what kind of stuff? You said what kind of stuff you're doing, but how can people connect with you guys?
www.rise.org is the big one. So Rise Foundation is definitely a charity that's very close to my heart. Like I said, we've been really lucky over the last few years. We've gotten to do some pretty amazing events. I wasn't involved with the first one, which was a walk from Sydney to the Gold Coast. The Gold Coast to Sydney, the other way around.
Walking from the Gold Coast to Sydney?
Yep. So 6 of the boys set off from the Gold Coast and walked back to Sydney.
How long does that take?
That took them 14 days. So 1,000 kilometres.
Oh, my.
And then the following year, we took a trip out west, and we ran mental health first aid workshops to Indigenous communities, which was luckily to be sponsored by City Tatterstall's Club. So we did drought relief and Indigenous communities out west. So that was a really humbling experience for me. Saw some communities that have been decimated by drugs and alcohol, and really understood what was happening out there. And growing up in Tamworth, we finished in Tamworth. Lots of media coverage, and it was a great experience. We got to take Jesse Pollock and Rennie Matua. So Jesse's former big wave surfer, and also now part of Bondi Rescue. And Rennie Matua, who was a former NRL player, famously failed a drug test and had to go through his own mental health first aid stuff, and then made it back.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So both two local Maroubra boys that we did that trip with. So pretty amazing opportunities that Rise has afforded me as well. We're in the midst of a conversation with Harley Davidson at the moment, where we could be doing an East Coast ride with Fletch and Hindy. So that's pretty exciting.
Oh, how good!
Yeah.
You guys got to film that, hey, and make some videos
definitely.
From that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
cool. So rise.org, and do you guys...
risefoundation.org.
Risefoundation.org, yeah.
Yep.
And are you guys operating from donations and stuff?
Yeah, what we do is the mental health first aid course itself, we book a venue, whether it be a surf lifesaving club, a local rugby league club or whatever, and then the mental health first aid is paid for by either that organisation or individuals.
Yeah.
And then of course when we can and when we get decent donations or we do a fundraiser, we'll go down that path. We've got our annual ball coming up in about 2 months' time. So that's being held at Crane Bar in in right in the heart of Rush Cutters, so that'll be good fun.
Nice.
So we're looking forward to that as an event too. So and people can get tickets for that as well if they'd like to come along and support. And we've got a couple of pretty interesting guests for that day. But I'm really looking forward to more time with Rise over the next couple of years and being able to do some more fundraising down that path, which is part of the reason that I've taken the direction that I've gone down with my work as well. Mentoring is predominantly online and those kind of things. So it gives me the opportunity to have some more time, not just at home, but to be wherever I need to be to facilitate those sessions.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to jump topics again.
Sure.
Because I will have to talk about the person that recommended you to come on board.
Sure.
And Kendrick is just off a 2020 Nutri-Grain win, which has been a long way in the making, an incredible story. And you have worked with him for quite a while.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, you're pretty close friends as well.
Yeah.
I guess, first of all, can you explain a little bit what type of training you've done with Kendrick and how your work has been?
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, when I first met Kendrick was now, I think it was just over 10 years ago. And at that time we were, looking at an incredibly fit, lean young man.
Still is, I think.
Oh yeah, it's very, very much so. But there wasn't that mature muscle. There wasn't that time under tension that comes from, getting in the weights room.
Yep.
He needed to get some power. But he also just needed that long-term strength and that just getting the dense muscle fibers to work well. When you're an endurance athlete like Kendrick is, the biggest problem is the repetitions that occur during your general training, whether it's swimming, running, paddling, kayaking, whatever it happens to be at the time.
Thousands and thousands of repetitions.
Absolutely. Right? The amount of time that Kendrick spends in the pool or on surf ski or whatever it happens to be, there's so many, repetitions done. So you've got to be really careful with the periodization. You've got to be really careful with loads because you don't want to, I guess, make those things worse by not doing the right type of training. And the number of times I see people doing, huge repetitions for these type of sports because they're trying to mirror the sport. You don't need to mirror the sport. You need to look at the athlete, pull them apart, do a full biomechanical analysis and understand what you're looking for from each individual. Kendrick shouldn't have the same program as Brad Gall, who was another athlete that I worked with around the same time. The boys did a wonderful doco while I was training them called Channel of Bones. And if you've not seen that, it's the paddle of Molokai. So it's an amazing event. But again, it's totally different training plans, two different people. You've got to understand that you're looking at an individual athlete. And I think that's the other part, the big difference of working with an individual athlete like Kendrick to a team-based sport where someone can replace that person in the team at any day. You might have 15 people on a rugby field and 23 in total, for the bench, but there's another 10 that are still punching it out in the weights room or punching it out on the training paddock to steal one of their spots. So there can be a much more group-oriented training session because they're all going to go and have to do the same job at some point through the year. When you're looking at an individual, you've got to be so careful around the injuries. You've got to be so careful that you're looking at the individual needs of that athlete to make sure that the program suits them.
Yeah. Can you give me some specifics of what type of exercises you would do with
Yeah,
Kendrick?
absolutely.
And some of the challenges that he had to work through? I think.
Sure. So I guess there's a couple of very simple things. When all of the sports, all of the elements of his sport mean that the injuries that occur are generally repetition. So I had to make sure that we were getting as much strength work through him as possible.
And you mean that through the strengthen the joints?
Strengthen the joints, yeah. Pavel Tsatsouline talks about the fact that one of the biggest things we do wrong as strength and conditioning coaches is progressive overload. He believes you should stick to a weight for 6 to 8 weeks. No change. Yep. So if it's a deadlift, and let's say it's a 100 kilo deadlift, you do that for 6 reps, 6 sets for 6 weeks straight.
Yeah, and he says it should be well under your max.
100%.
Well
yeah.
under.
So sorry, I shouldn't have said 100%. Yeah. 100% as in, yes, I 100% agree with you, but he believes it should be about 70 to 80% max. Okay, because the idea that he says is that if you're looking for long-term longevity and joint health, and with the rise of things like collagen and these kind of things as the world's greatest sports supplement, we're talking a lot about joint health. We're talking a lot about these things because the amount of athletes that have joint pain, and Kendrick's would have been ankles, knees, back at times from too much paddling. All of these kind of things are just such essential points. So we need to really look at strengthening those areas. So not going beyond that testing range and maybe not testing at all, leaving testing for 8, 10, 12 weeks, who knows? But realistically, if I have to be specific so that your listeners can understand, we did a heck of a lot of trap bar deadlifting. We did a lot of pull-ups.
Yep.
A lot of slow eccentric work to get that time under tension without busting him.
So very controlled, right?
Very controlled. He had some...
Why the trap bar, not a normal barbell?
Okay, that's just a positional thing. So each individual has unique biomechanics. And by using a trap bar, you can get a hip hinge and load the weight beside the athlete rather than in front. So therefore, there's obviously some things that we take out of the problem zone, if you will. We all hear how many times that someone's worried about hurting their back doing a deadlift.
Yeah, that never happens in CrossFit.
No, I've never seen it ever.
Never seen a bad rounded back in CrossFit.
Absolutely. But I guess the other problem there comes into, when I have that conversation about what's the right position for each individual sport, you watch a powerlifter, you watch some of the best powerlifters of all time. Their back is rounded.
Their backs are so strong.
But their backs are so strong. So don't compare yourself. You can't compare apples and oranges, okay? Powerlifters have a different technique. It's the same when we talk about bench pressing. Powerlifting bench press is different to your stock standard, I'm going to bang out some hypertrophy, okay? So don't always do exactly what you see.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So,
People that coach themsells through YouTube and look at the best powerlifters in the world. I'm like, I can lift like that.
Look, even, I use online, I use True Coach and Trainerize for my online programming.
Yeah.
And some of the videos that are there aren't the way I teach those particular lifts. Okay. That's okay.
That's totally okay.
That doesn't mean that's not, but do I get rid of those videos and put in my own? Yeah, I do, because I want people doing things my way.
Yeah.
Okay, but that doesn't mean, and we said it before, there's plenty of ways to skin a cat. And sorry for all the vegans out there as I say that.
Yeah. I think what my very brief experience with a trap bar was that I found it as a trainer that it was easier to get an unskilled athlete to lift a little bit heavier weight with a trap bar safely than with a barbell.
Look, that's an excellent statement and one that I 100% agree with. I guess the other part of that is you have to look at things, and I hate people saying that a trap bar is a regression from conventional. Yeah, it's another lift. It's like saying, a squat and a goblet squat, one's a regression. Well, no, if you do it for the purpose of the exercise, there's no regression or progression. Yeah. It just is another exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. What are some of the most varied sports that you have coached athletes for at the same time, and how has kind of like the difference has been there?
Oh, that's a cracker. So I once trained a curler. So, curling in the Olympics, where you
in the Winter Olympics? Norwegians are great at it.
100%, right? So I once...
An Australian curler?
Well, no, he was from New Zealand.
Okay.
But I came across him when I was working in New Zealand, and he... so I was working for a rugby team there, and he found me online and wanted to come and do some stuff. Basically, for your listeners, and I guess the only way I can describe this, his role was a sweeper. So he literally got a broom and he swept as fast as he could while he was moving to his left, because he was on the left side so he was sliding to his left. Now, by the way, they don't change sides. Just so you know, right?
Oh, so you get very
very specific. Okay, wow. It's like a surfboat rower here. You get very specific to which side of the boat you're on. So because they have to move to their left, so there's one person generally on that side and one person on the right hand side. So that person has to move to the right. So it's a different movement. So he was skating on ice skates to the left at the same time, right? So and not literally on ice skates, but I mean
they're kind of on sliding shoes.
Yeah,
right?
but I mean in the sense it's on ice, so he's trying to move his feet fast enough to slide across that as he's sweeping. So that was probably one of the most interesting sports I've ever come across.
What type of training did you do with him?
Hey, look, believe it or not, it was a huge amount of back and rehab style training, right? Because he's bent over huge amounts of time, because the faster they sweep, the further it slides. It's very simple.
I guess there's a lot of continuous loading on his lower back, although light, but it's still a lot, right? Yeah.
It's so consistent. So yeah.
Wow, that's a funny one.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah.
Good fun.
All right. So I also was told to ask you, do you work on anything else business-wise? Is there something that you have kind of going with you? Because you're, I mean, the word entrepreneur gets thrown around left, right, and center, but what kind of businesses are you?
Look, so I guess what kind of eventuated for me is I had an interesting discussion a few years back where I first put together a workshop, and I put together a programming and periodization workshop. So I started teaching at this particular workshop. Prior to that, I'd been doing a lot of, I guess, little upskill style things. I was a personal training manager at Fitness First, became a regional personal training manager, and then worked into, national fitness manager for Vision personal training, worked for Virgin Active at certain points. So I did a lot of education for trainers and for S&Cs. So what I realized is that there was an interesting niche there that wasn't really being utilized from the strength and conditioning perspective. There was lots of business coaches out there, getting into how to make your business better and so on and so forth. But there wasn't a lot
all the time.
Yeah, of course, right? But there wasn't a lot of work around upskilling people and actually showing some authenticity around your training methods and those kind of things. So I got right into that and really enjoyed that side of things. And then I did a couple of lectures, be it at the fitness shows and the Oz Fitness Show and a few other events like that, the old Filex, and had the opportunity.
Can I ask quickly?
Yeah, sure.
When you say, because you're kind of into the topic of coaching coaches now in a way, do you mean upskilling them in strength and conditioning education, or in their business and how to run the business?
So
business?
Both.
Okay.
So I've kind of taken I guess a two-pronged approach at how to do this. Whereas I think a lot of the other guys have either gone down the business coaching route because it's nice and inexpensive as far as setup and so on and so forth. And also your experience doesn't have to be that great to be good at it. Because you, as we all know, you can be great at coaching someone and not that great at doing. So I think realistically, that's where that's gone. Now, for me, what that's meant is some people will come to me for training, and they'll be trainers, and it'll be an online sort of scenario, and then they go, hey, can we book a session and maybe just do like one session on how to do the power clean, how to coach it in 3 different ways. Sure, no problem. So that's how that sort of started, and that branded out and branched out to kind of being probably more than 80% of my business today. Then what occurred as the next evolution was that I had an argument with Fitness Australia around how poor the actual fitness qualification was. I was sick of seeing these ads for RTOs that were charging $2,000 to get your Cert 3, Cert 4, and I was like, how can this be possible? Like, yeah, exactly. And I used to make the comment all the time that was, find the cheapest qualification, get it done as fast as possible. And I'd listened to myself a few years ago and I went, why am I saying that? That's the exact opposite of what I believe. I spent years and years and years at uni and I still think I know nothing. Right. So here's the simple concept for me. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to rewrite the Cert 3, Cert 4. Sounds easy enough, right? So I'm currently 150K in a hole over rewriting that, and have finally launched my own registered training organisation, which I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to do so. And the reason that I believe that this will help to change everything for me is that I'm proud of the course. I'm proud that it's attached to a mentorship, and I'm a proud person that says you can actually get a hold of me and say, hey, Clint, I'm having trouble with this question. Can you explain to me what it is? Now, I'm not going to take on 250,000 people, and just punch them through. And it's certainly not the cheapest course on the market. It's not, okay? It's also not the most expensive either, but it's definitely there with other things added to it. And I believe that the 12-month mentorship that I've added to it is probably the most valuable part of it.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. That's a great point. I want to elaborate a little bit on that, I think.
Yeah, sure.
So when I did my Cert 3 and Cert 4, I did exactly what you said. Yep. I kind of got through that as quickly as I could, but I was very lucky that I was working with Paul Walton and Christian Distoli, and I had great mentors in being a trainer. And that's really the only reason why I became like a half decent trainer, because I had personality and got the skills from them. Nothing to do with the Cert 3 and Cert 4, really. So if someone do want to become a trainer now, and I guess legally you pretty much have to do your Cert 3 and Cert 4, but are you saying that you're offering another course that is, by the sounds of it, way more beneficial to take as well?
No. It's still a Cert 3, Cert 4.
Okay, so they do that, and they don't have to do like a regular Cert 3 and 4 online like I did.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Because I guess where I had a real issue with that is, what Wall & Pony did for you was very simple. They were your mentors through that whole process, right? Like you learnt while you're on the floor. And the number of times that I've heard trainers say, find the cheapest one and I'll help mentor you through this, and I'll teach you the skills on the floor, or whatever it happens to be. Well, look, let's make sure that it's the best possible education that you can get. And I say it all the time when I'm lecturing. I'll sit down in front of a group of PTs that let's say I'm going to a local vision studio where somebody's asked me to sit down and do an upskill for their group. You'll have one trainer that's been there for a year and another trainer that's been there for 10 years. So their education process may be very, very different. One may be university educated and the other one may not be. It doesn't. It's about trying to give people more information than required. And my course has about 60% that's unaccessible.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Fitness Australia basically say this is the core topics, and you can't stray outside of it. Well, I decided to add that to it for free. Because I think that is what you need over the next 12 months of being a trainer.
Yeah.
So let's say, the business module in the Cert 3, Cert 4 is disgusting. Okay. Pretty much a total waste of paper. And if I'd followed that, not only would I be broke today, I would also probably be, dramatically in debt and have all kinds of problems. Now, the concept behind it didn't teach how to pay tax. It didn't show you why you might want to choose MYOB. Crazy. It didn't show you whether you should be a sole trader, a company, or whatever.
So maybe the most important part by setting up your whole PT business.
Correct.
And you got to pay your taxes, because if not, that's
it. It's going to come back and bite you eventually.
Yeah, very badly.
So I guess the way that I sort of allowed that to unfold was having a look through that to see where that would actually sit for everyone. So I rewrote that module with about 80% more content than were the core topics. And they said, that's great, but we can't allow any of that in to be assessed. I said, okay, so what do you want me to do with it? And they said, you can do whatever you want with it. I said, so if I leave it there and give it to everyone anyway, and then mentor them through for the next 12 months and go, now go back and check that. Now go back and check that.
But it just doesn't get assessed.
It doesn't get assessed.
You don't get a grade on it, I
guess.
Is what
Correct.
You're saying. Yeah.
So it's there as additional information.
Yeah.
Now, all of the units that are there have the core product that needs to be assessed, and you get your little sign-off and you get your little Cert 3, Cert 4, but then every unit has additional material that you can keep forever and hopefully go back and check and reference and when you need.
And use it.
And use. a lot more practical knowledge in there too that's essential for running a fitness business.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an important point again.
Yep.
So if you are a trainer if you're not a trainer but you're thinking about doing your Cert 3 and 4,
Yes.
this sounds incredible. But if you already are a trainer and you've done your Cert 3 and 4 and you feel like you didn't get anything out of it, is there anything that you offer for that type of person?
Yeah, that's where I've got two different online mentorships, and so a free mentorship group that people can join and get some free content.
Is that
absolutely
a Facebook group?
Facebook group. Yep, nice and easy. I do regular Zooms to that particular group, video up. Some of it's, it might be just some research that I found on particular things that I think is essential or important. Now, there's some limited content in there, but there's definitely plenty of content for someone who is out there looking to continue their education. But realistically, and showing all my cards, that group is there to set people up, to show them what kind of content they would get in the paid mentorship, which is part of my business. Okay, I make no claims that I'm doing this all for free and out of the goodness of my heart. I want to make sure that I still have an income and
you live in Sydney, you got to
pay
rent or a mortgage.
Right?
That's not cheap here, that's for sure. No, that's awesome. But I think I've got to disagree a little bit with what you're saying, because you are giving some stuff away for free. You are.
Yeah.
And that's actually how a lot of YouTubers operate now as well, is they give all these bite-sized pieces out for free, and then and that's awesome. You learn a lot from that. But if you feel you want to delve in even deeper, then that's like a pay portal.
And what I find is it's the first year out guys who get a lot out of that free stuff, and then
because they're pretty green, right?
Yeah, that's right. So they get a lot out of that because they've gone and done this crappy little Cert 3, Cert 4 and not really had a lot of information. Now, the other problem here is, right, you do your Cert 3 and Cert 4 and you've only ever been in one gym. You have one perspective.
Yeah, it's kind of,
and that's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to get out there more.
You've got to get out there more, right? You've got to understand, there's some great parts of the bodybuilding world. There's some great parts of the CrossFit world. There's some great parts to the athletic and the calisthenic world, Take them all in
awesome point.
And cross it over. Turn into you.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have loved to. I mean, like I said, I had a great upbringing, if you can call it, as a trainer through athletic. I've got no criticisms there, but it would have been cool as well to go to a place like Jungle Brothers and work with those guys, because they do it a little bit different. Right? It would be such a value add.
And I just think that what people forget is that you can learn so much from other industries too.
Okay, yeah.
Quite regularly, I'll try and get into other types of business. They still might be in fitness, and some of them might be, in accounting or a lawyer or whatever. Learning how they do certain things teaches you different things, right? Like, so, the guys here at True, the obviously parent company and whatnot is from a totally different industry. There's plenty of crossover in things that you can learn from how you've marketed one business to how you market another.
Yeah.
So I always say, get out there, get outside of your circle and find different things.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I struggled with in the beginning doing this podcast, was like trying to think about the guests and who I wanted on. But then I changed my mentality to, you can always learn something from someone else. Like every person that I've had on here, there's always something they can teach me, right? And hopefully the listener as well.
Yeah, you bet.
And then when I've changed that mentality, I've recorded more than one a week, maybe. So it's been
amazing. My grandfather was he put pallets together for a living. So he worked for a company called Shep Pallets, and so he literally stuck nails in pallets for 50 years.
An old school with a hammer?
100%.
Wow.
Right? That's how it started, right? And that obviously then progressed and whatever else. And I remember him telling me once about having to go to a training day. I must have been 8 or 10 years old, right? And, like I've talked about my grandmother and my grandfather in this podcast, so obviously they are both very, hierarchical in my family. They are definitely the pinnacle, so to speak. And it's interesting because I remember him telling me about this particular training day, and he was telling me about the first time he had to use a computer. Now, what I remember from that conversation is he was probably, I don't know, maybe in his probably in his late 40s at this stage, maybe 50s even, I'm not sure, and had to learn how to use a computer to do this training. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, okay, if he can learn something new today, I can always learn something new.
Yeah.
Right? You know, absolutely. So, and I think that's a massive take home for me. You know, I'm sitting here looking, there's a couple of pallets sitting in the background here, and I'm sitting there thinking,
what are you talking about? This studio is pristine.
There's
no pallets in here.
it does look like those ones were still put together with a hammer and a nail. So, you know, so maybe they've
been abused a bit.
Yeah, but the point is that I'm trying to make realistically was around the fact that, you know, he'd done this simple, hard manual labor for his whole life. And then at, you know, 40 or 50 odd years old, had to learn how to use a computer for the first time.
That's awesome.
So it's just remember that things will change and that you can always learn a new skill that will carry over later to life, so that you've got something that you can take on and I guess use for beneficial.
Yeah. What I always like to say this, that the day you stop learning, that's the day when you're getting old.
Oh,
like
yeah.
As long as you're learning,
the day you die.
Yeah, well, hopefully, right? Like, if you can keep that going, that's as long as you're learning new stuff. I think you stay so much younger.
Absolutely.
And if you start refusing to learn new things,
yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I wanted to round this podcast off with something that I'm sure you must have had a lot of, because you've been in, like you said, in the industry for a long time. You've been around a lot of people. By the sign of yourself, I think you've surrounded yourself with a lot of knowledgeable people.
Yep.
What are some of the advice that you've been given along the way that still sticks with you today and you feel like you got a lot out of it? And you can mention more than one, of course.
I think the first one is, and probably the one that I repeat to so many people that I mentor, if you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And we've all heard that 100 times over, but it's huge for me. Use your time effectively. You know, driving out here this morning, listening to Audible. You know,
what did you listen to?
I'm listening to Michael Pollan at the moment. So he's just written a book about the use of psychedelics on brain enhancement.
Oh wow!
So
microdosing.
Yeah, microdosing. Yeah, which obviously is a little catch word at the moment. Yeah. But using LSD and psilocybin and things like that to help to cure alcohol and drug addiction, but also to see what else that can potentially unlock and unleash in the world. So that's of interest to me. Like, I haven't done it, but yet I should definitely add. No, I'm happy to just say yet.
Yeah.
So, but for me, it's definitely something that, you know, I see the brain is the final frontier. We're still using so little of it. So yeah. But yeah, use your time effectively. Podcasts are such an awesome thing to listen to. But also remember that the things you learn on a podcast don't have to have major scientific backing behind them either. So please,
this is definitely one of, not this episode in particular, but my whole show is definitely not heavily scientific backed.
Theory is a great thing because, and this leads me to my next point. Everything starts as a theory, then research gets done behind it, and then it either gets proved or disproved. And then 10 years time, that's science, right? So the point is, if somebody has a theory, don't knock them about doing that. Don't ever stand there and go, no, that's wrong. It might be, but allow that theory to be researched and go down that path. And the way you research a theory and the way I research a theory are going to be two completely different things. I remember teaching someone how to read scientific research well. And then the next thing I know, every single post on their Facebook was a scientific piece of literature. Okay. And I said, stop doing it, because I can find you another piece of scientific literature that disproves the same theory that you're just trying to prove with that one. So just remember that unless you can find 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 pieces of literature that says that is actually true, there's always ways to manipulate data, even in a triple-blind placebo study, to get that done. So I think remembering that there are more than one way is a huge piece of advice. You
actually told a great example of that before as well, right? With how you coached clients in your early days to what you do now.
Absolutely.
You've been through such a long journey and learned so many lessons throughout it that it's changed.
Yeah. Look, and I'm mentoring guys now that were born when I started in the industry. You know what I mean? So like, you know, it's interesting how you deal with those people. If your listeners haven't listened to the Brett Bartholomew book, Conscious Coaching, or bought the book Conscious Coaching, I would suggest that they get off the phone or whatever they're listening to on and go get this right now. He talks about the coaching styles, but he talks about it very differently. Talks about it in a conscious term, about how to look at an individual and see if they're actually absorbing what you're saying. Because sitting down with, you know, and you know this yourself as a trainer, if you are coaching a 50-year-old man who is a, you know, high flyer executive in his field, you know, he's you know, the corporate guru, you have to speak to them in a different way than you would speak to a 24-year-old girl who has never stepped foot into a weights room. Now, it's not because they're male and female. It's because their experience has dictated different things in their life. One is used to being, you know, the one barking the orders, so to speak, and the other one is used to sitting back and absorbing and whatever else might be, you know, maybe timid, maybe, you know, a little bit shy, whatever it happens to be. You've got to speak in different ways to different people, and it's about learning how to do that. And I certainly didn't do that early in my career. I just barked orders because I thought that was awesome.
Just yelling at everyone. That's it's where I think most people start.
Correct.
And I think that point is great, and that was one of the things Wallen and Christian taught me as well. Is you have to connect with a person. If you're not connecting with your client, there's no future there at all. Look, and that goes both ways, I think, like you said.
Absolutely.
If you're someone looking for a trainer, find someone that you connect with.
Yeah, and I say it all the time. Sit down with the trainer or jump on a Skype call if it's an online person. That person, you need to connect with that person because you need to see I guess, whether you're going to be able to trust and understand and believe in that person because you need to buy in.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I even think that advice goes for group classes as well.
Oh my God. You can sense you get less time with that coach.
Yeah.
You know, you get a shorter amount of time to connect with that person, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always say when people are asking for, you know, what should I look for when joining a gym? And I said, well, number one, don't just try one.
Yeah.
If you try one, you only know one thing.
Correct.
You got to try different things. And that was the best advice I got when I was looking for a jiu-jitsu place.
Yeah.
It's like, because I lived in Melbourne at the time.
Yeah.
The only guy that I knew that was a color belt lived in Sydney.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, I don't really know the places down there, but go and try at least these three. And he gave me just the closest ones.
Yeah, sure.
And they turned out to be completely different.
Yeah.
And if I'd ended up on the first place, I would not have enjoyed it as much.
And what gym isn't completely different? Like, so driving here, you know, obviously, you know, we within, you know, stone's throw of this facility, you know, you've got places like the Cube, you've got Chocolate Box, you've got Fitness First, you know, and the variety between just those three alone are insanely different, okay? You have to find what suits you.
And we're so lucky we have all these options. I mean, someone told me that Brookvale, where we're recording from, is the most densely populated like boutique style gym.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, you know, like, I mean, I worked in probably one of the original boutique style gyms, so to speak, which was 98 Riley Street. I worked there for a number of years.
Still around,
still doing well. And look, I mean, you know, that I remember the first time I stepped foot in there, because I'd come out of a commercial facility prior to that. And I stepped foot in there and I just looked at it and I was like, what's going on here?
So different.
Different. But
awesome.
Over the years, I've had the opportunity to lecture in so many different gyms and meet so many different gym owners. And the one thing that reigns absolutely 100% supreme, if the owner works in the business, they have their finger on the pulse, they understand what's going on, and they keep the business thriving. If the owner isn't there, it might as well just be a pure commercial gym, and for the purposes of discussion, a 24/7 style facility that just takes your money.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, I should say I know a gym where the owner is there all the time, but actually it doesn't really appear that he's working too much, because a lot of people, he does the group classes in his own gym, and a lot of people in that group doesn't know that he's the owner.
Wow.
But he trains there every single day. And it's a very, very successful gym. I'm not going to mention the name because I know that he enjoys just being a normal person in his own gym. But he runs the ship.
Yeah.
But probably half of his members doesn't even know that he runs that place.
Well, and look, that's probably a very unique facility, but obviously
taking him a long time to do that.
I bet. Yeah, I bet. So that's great.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, Clint, thank you so much for coming on. One thing I did forget was where can people find you if they're interested in doing your course?
Okay, sure. Look, I mean, I guess the simplest method right now is just to contact me personally. I want to talk to people.
On Instagram or?
Yeah, look, Instagram's an easy start. My email, my phone number are both attached to my Instagram account because, again, look, this is... in my opinion, this is a personal business. It's really interesting that they added the word personal in front of training. So I think maybe that should be what it is, right?
Yeah.
I don't want people getting to a call center to get it sold a PT certificate or a mentorship. I want people to come through me and I want them to make the choice. You know, I spoke to and I'll give you my details in 2 secs. I spoke to a girl yesterday afternoon. So one of the girls that I'm mentoring referred her across to me. And she rang me and she said, hey, I wanted to chat about the Cert 3, Cert 4, chat, 20, 30 odd minutes we chatted for. And at the end of it, I said, now look, I want you to go and ring AIF and FIA and have a conversation with them. And she goes, what do you mean? She goes, I've already rung both of them and they wouldn't let me get off the phone. They tried to get my credit card details before I got off the phone. I said, hey, not my bag. Now, that might be the worst business advice that I'm about to give anyone. But the simple fact is I want people that have made the decision. Okay. I want them to be really happy and really proud that they decide to work with me. And that's all that matters to me, that integrity and authenticity. So, Clint Hill, Clint_Hill Strength. Now I almost did it again. Clint_Hill Strength.
On Instagram?
On Instagram.
Yeah.
And that's, as I said, my email address is there, as is my mobile phone number. So feel free to contact me any way you wish.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Clint.
Thanks very much for having me. Cheers.